Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hello everyone and welcome to the show. I'm Trevor Stockwell, and here's a question right at the start of this episode. Are you happy in your business? Can your clients tell that you're happy? Does it show in everyday life? Well, think about those things for a few moments as I chat with our guest today, Emily. Emily's an author and a speaker, and she's written the book Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief, because she helps those going through grief to face life with love, optimism and joy. Sounds a heavy subject, but it touches all of us at some point, and there's things that we can learn today just in everyday life that helps us make our businesses happier for ourselves and for other people. Lots we're going to dig into, but before I do that, welcome Emily Thiroux Threatt.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Apologies for mispronouncing your name right at the end now. I did practice just before we started, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
So it's a key topic. It's an important topic. Before we dig into it in detail, for people listening, whatever stage you're at, some point grief will touch you. And I want to be sensitive to those that are listening, whether it's a recent thing or not. It's always sensitive to some point in our lives. You may not feel like you want to listen to this much at the moment. You may not think happiness is going to come back, but it can. Emily helps people transition through the grieving process. So if you're not going through it right now, chances are at some point you will meet somebody that you know that's going through it. So anything that you glean, you can practically implement yourself and or share with other people that can help them overcome and get through a difficult period in their lives. So Emily, before we dig into the process of it, you've had several different businesses, owned several different companies. Just share a little bit about your background that's brought you really to where you got to the point where you wrote the book.
Okay. I have had actually several careers in my lifetime and have loved every one of them. I just always keep finding the next shiny object and get to do something really great. And the first business I was involved in, I was only 13 years old when my father bought an ambulance company, a small ambulance company. And my mom and dad and I ran it together, including dispatching all the calls. At that time, you only had to be 14 to go on ambulance calls. So I went on calls when I turned 14. And that was my introduction to business and introduction to death and grieving way back then. So since then, I've been a nurse. I have owned a theater, an art gallery and cafe, and I've taught writing at the university for many years. And I'm actually still teaching writing online at the university. So all these things kind of combined together helped guide me after I've had two husbands die, and also my parents, my sister, lots of friends and relatives. So I've had lots of different kinds of experience of grief throughout my life. But after my last husband died, I really was using writing a lot to help me with my grieving. And I found techniques that I used that helped me so much I wanted to help other people. So I invited people actually that I didn't know to come over to my house, and we started a writing through grief group that was wonderful for all of us to use. They could see the value of the writing technique to help. And after that, I had an occurrence that happened that inspired me to write my book. And my book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief, has at the end of every chapter something that you can actively do to help you deal with grief. And not many books on grief have that sort of thing out there. They're more of telling a memoir or telling a story as opposed to being something that can help you, that can lead you and guide you on your way.
Okay. Yeah. No, that sounds interesting. I'd like to quiz you about the ambulance company, but maybe just for time.
Okay.
But for time, let's focus more on the. So you help people kind of reclaim the joy through having suffered grief. We'll get into that bit just sort of a little bit further on. But what would be some of the first steps that people can take? Maybe they're right in the middle of it now. Some people, it's a different process for everyone, isn't it? There isn't a right or wrong way that just fits everyone, from my experience. But there are certain things that we have in common and we need to get through. What would be some of the first couple of steps that people could take to help them sort of, I suppose, accept the feelings, the emotions and what's happened, but also navigate those?
Right before I say that, I want to say that since this is a business show, a lot of times in business, you are dealing with people that are grieving in all different stages, and you might not even realize it. So anything that I say today, think about it in that context too, how you can use what I say that may help somebody else.
Yeah.
But the very first thing that I always say in grieving is to take good care of yourself, because that's usually the first thing to go when somebody's in deep grief. They dealing with their own needs is like the last thing on their mind. They'll do things like not eat wisely, not bathe, not get enough sleep or get too much sleep, so that they're not doing what's most healthy for their body and for their heart. So self-care is the absolute primary thing to do at the beginning of grief and throughout. But really focusing on it at the beginning makes it easier to do as you move forward.
Yeah, that's a really key point. It's easy if you're running a business to then almost hide in the running of the business and not approach the everyday stuff that you need to do as well, because you want to numb certain feelings by keeping yourself active. But no, that's a good point. And so I guess then for people that know people that have recently lost somebody, being around them in an encouraging way to just help them with the self-care is also a practical way we can sort of help when we don't really know how to help.
That's right. That's very important. And one thing that you can do in a situation like that people tend to not want to do because they're afraid that it'll cause discomfort. But if you talk to them positively about the person that they lost, tell them a favorite memory or something, and you can say something like, "Boy, I'm sure that you miss him, but I remember what a fantastic smile he had, that I always felt good when I was around him." Saying something like that is so much better than saying something like, "I'm sorry for your loss," because everybody seems to say, "I'm sorry for your loss," and it's lost its meaning. It's like, "Have a nice day," or "How are you?" People don't really want an answer to it. They just say it because they think they need to honor your situation and then get away from it as fast as they can. Yeah. So doing something positive about the person who's gone is much more helpful. And it's also less triggering. You're less likely to cry if somebody says, "I really loved how she did this," or "I loved that experience we had together." That's more likely to let you breathe a little easier, that you're not going to have to dive into talking about the sad stuff at that point, or trying to help the people who are talking to you. That's another thing that happens a lot, that people are looking to you for comfort because they're grieving about the same situation, and that's not helpful.
Yeah. I like that you mentioned about helping people sort of write things down to help express the emotions in a different way. I suppose in some ways I never actually tried that myself, I must admit. That's a good one though. But what I found was when I start speaking about it, that's when sometimes the tears and the sadness comes. And yes, it's good to cry. It's good to express ourselves in different ways to get the emotion out. But I like the way that writing could be a good way for people to, start that process, or it be one of the aspects within the process of navigating those emotions. So that's really good. So is that a way of, I don't know, go on. I feel like I've interrupted. Sorry. So other areas or other ways that you help people?
Well, with writing, since you brought that up, it helped me a whole lot. And there's lots of different things that you can write. And it just, whatever it is that's going to help you the most at that moment is what you can be writing about. And it can be something like exploring something. For instance, if you didn't have a chance to have a conversation with the person you lost about something that they did that you feel like you needed to forgive them for, and you didn't have a chance to forgive them, and now you feel like you can't, you still can write about it, right? I said, I know that this happened, and I want you to know that you're totally forgiven, because when you don't take care of things that need to be forgiven, that can just build up and make things harder to deal with. Or if you feel like you didn't tell someone you loved them enough, that happens a lot with parents in particular. When you have a parent die, that you feel like, I wish I would have made them really know what they meant to me. Well, write them a letter. Write it like they're sitting right there with you, and say everything that you want to say. I do that especially on holidays and birthdays, because those seem to be kind of trigger times. And so I'll write to whoever it is, because I'll be like, my mom's birthday is coming up and my sister's death day is coming up. That on those days, I'll probably be thinking about them a lot. So if I write those things down, and if I can focus on positive things when I'm writing it, that can help a lot. But that's not all you can write. You can write things that you really need to deal with that you didn't get a chance to deal with, and then let them go. Once you write them down and you say they're forgiven, you don't have to think about it anymore. You can just focus on right now. That's one of the main things that can help you with any kind of grief and loss, because there's lots of loss in business. There's lots of loss. You may lose a business. You may lose an account. You may lose an office, whatever it is. There's lots of loss that goes on, and you kind of handle it the same way as you handle grief, the same techniques that you would handle grief with.
Yeah, that's really good the way you tied those two in, because there's lots of different aspects that, like you say, where we want stuff to carry on, or we want someone to still be there, but for one reason or another, just things change. We can't control certain things, and then we find ourselves in a position that is less than ideal. And it's, how do we get through that? What were some of the challenges when you were in business? Did you suffer the loss of your husband, or either husband, while you were running your own business?
Actually, when Jacques, he wasn't the last husband to die, he was the one before that. We had been married for 22 years. Wow. And we had a live theater and school of arts that also had a cafe and an art gallery. So it was quite comprehensive business that was all consuming. And he was a great singer and actor and loved to perform. And I did the directing. I loved to act too, but I couldn't act and produce and run the business and do everything else at the same time. Yeah. So we did a lot of it together until he got to the point where he couldn't really perform anymore. And he would just kind of come down and hang out in the cafe and talk to people and that sort of thing, until it got to the point where he couldn't do that. Eventually, it got to the point where I was trying to run this business on my computer from his hospital bedside, because he kept having to be in the hospital. And when I had started this business, we also, I approached all my friends about the School of Arts, because in California, where I lived at the time, they had cut all the arts programs in the schools, and so many kids learned so much through the arts that I thought that was a tragedy, and I wanted to do something about it. So I contacted all my friends and said, I'm going to have this organizational meeting to talk about an idea. And I pitched to them creating a nonprofit organization that would make it so that any child that wanted to come to these classes would be able to come to the classes. And so it wasn't like a rich kid thing. So a lot of times you think, theater, that's something that the rich kids get to go to. Yeah. So we did that, and it was great. They were able to write grants and get scholarships and do all these things. Well, the more time I had to spend away from the business, the harder it got for me to be able to operate the business. So I went to that nonprofit organization and said, I really need to be home or at the hospital with Jacques like all the time now. If I donate this whole business into the nonprofit organization, will you accept it? And will you continue to operate it? And they said yes. It was a big decision on both parts, but they said yes. And I was able to kind of walk away from that. So as I'm dealing for 2 more years with Jacques' illness, I also was dealing with the loss of this business that I had created, and I really loved, and I really missed it. Yet since I had walked away, they would welcome me back to come and just visit and say hi, but they didn't want to consult with me on anything because they were trying to make it their own. And I had to respect that, because when you give something away, it's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
And in business, that can be a real challenge. And I think that was one of the biggest business challenges that I had in dealing with loss, because I was dealing with the loss of what was going on with my husband at the same time as with the loss of something that I created that meant a great deal to me.
Yeah. I think part of human nature is we like to hold on to things, don't we? We get attached to things or people as well. And it, unless we actually choose that I've finished with that chapter's finished, I know it's time to move on. Yeah, you're right. It's difficult to just let go of stuff. It's not, for most people, I guess, it's not a one day you're doing it, the next day you're not, and everything's fine, is it? There's a process through that as well. So, okay, no, that makes a lot of sense. So how would you then get back to the point where you've navigated the loss, you've learned how to almost regain your happiness despite what's happened, because tomorrow and the future days, they need you to be not necessarily happy, but your best self, don't they? They need you to be able to overcome all of the hurt, work through it, and then be able to move forward. So I know that's a big question, or there's a big question coming in a very short time that we have, but just what would be a strategy, I suppose, for moving forward, getting the joy, the happiness back over a period of however long it takes, to the point where you can then embrace the future again?
I think really considering, and I did this by writing about it to me, not for anybody else to read, but just in my journal, what would make me happy? What did I want? Where could I go with my life at this point? And I made some pretty big decisions, and they led to comfort and happiness for me. With Ron, who was my last husband to die, we had moved here to Maui on Hawaii 2 years before he died, because he'd lived here a long time before I knew him. And when he realized that his days were numbered, he said, that's really where I would like to spend my time. So I thought I was living in my forever home with all my good friends that I was surrounded with. And we left all that and came here to Maui for him. And then those 2 years with him here were wonderful. But then when it came time that he was gone, it's like, okay, now what do I do? I'm literally in the most remote place in the world, and I don't know that many people. I have to say that I'm surrounded by more people like neighbors and friends here than I've been any place in my life. There's so much love here on the island, and everything's beautiful and peaceful, and it's just wonderful. So I'm very fortunate that I was in that situation. But I really thought about, okay, what's going to make me feel better? What's going to support me, and how can I support anything else in the process? And I realized that having my son come to live with me, he was at a place where he was between homes, and he was actually grateful for the invitation to come, and he still lives with me. He's an adult, and it's wonderful to have somebody else in the house, that I'm not sitting here by myself. And he really appreciates it, and we kind of do things together. There were also some things that I had always thought I wanted to do. For instance, I love to do ceramic sculpture, and I had thought it would be interesting to travel to different places in the world to see how they do ceramic sculpture other places, and maybe take classes there and participate with that. And I only did that a couple times when I was with Ron, because we just didn't want to be apart from each other that long, and he wasn't the least bit interested in doing ceramic sculpture. So I just had a couple of shorter workshops that I went to when we were together. But when he was gone, I said, okay, I found an organization that's an international ceramics organization, and I traveled to Tuscany and spent time over there and studied there in a place that I'd always dreamed of studying, and it was wonderful. And I also went to Bali and with the same organization, and had the same kind of experience with learning all the different things about ceramics and their culture, and having the opportunity to actually work in studios there to create the kinds of things that I wanted to learn more about creating. And allowing myself to just do these things, and to just get on a jet and go halfway around the world by myself was a big deal for me. but because there was this organization that was kind of overseeing it, I didn't feel like I was totally on my own in a strange place.
Yeah.
And so it supported me in my adventure. And both, I wouldn't give up those 2 adventures for the world. It was really great. And in finding things like that made me very happy while I was participating in them. When I came home, I did it about a year apart. And when I was home, the memories and what I learned and everything that was involved in the traveling is things that I could apply to my life every day, and that could make me happier. And I could share things that I learned with other people here. And it was just making decisions that were to actually do something I always wanted to do. And it really felt good. And it really elevated my comfort level with myself and my being able to be happy. It didn't mean I missed my husband's any less, or that I wasn't still grieving, but it helped me have things in perspective, because with both my husbands, I knew that they would want me to live my best life, even though they weren't there with me. They'd still want me to live my best life, and they would really want me to be happy. They would be so disappointed if I couldn't get out of the sorrow, the deep sorrow that can come with loss.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I like the fact that, well, lots that you said there, which I like, but particularly it's having people around or nearby, maybe not every day in the house that, keep asking you if you're okay and all of that. It's well-meaning friends, they're lovely and there's a place for them. But it's also like, you don't cut yourself off, do you? Because there can be the tendency you shut yourself away and try and deal with the hurt. And in some ways, there's an easy option to lose hope. It's all falling apart, whatever. And it's different for different people. And whilst you don't belittle the fact that people have gone and there is loss, you have to find motivation somewhere, don't you?
Yes. I can... Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go on.
When Jacques died, we had, as I said, been married for 22 years. We were in a community where it's like everybody knew us and we knew everybody. And we had lots of friends. And when he first started getting sick, they'd show up at the hospital, they'd show up at the house, they'd bring casseroles, they'd bring flowers, they'd call him on the phone. And it was really great and wonderful and supportive. The longer he stayed sick, the less we saw of them. And it wasn't because they stopped caring. It's because it was so difficult for them to see the deterioration, that he wasn't the friend that they knew before, that he was going through really significant changes. So when he was gone, the celebration we had was miraculous. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was and how many people came. But when they all left, I was by myself. Yeah. And nobody was inviting me to go places with them or do things with them or calling me on the phone or sending me a card. Nothing. It's like everything just stopped. And that was really hard to deal with, because since it had stopped, it was very hard for me to reach out to anybody because I didn't really understand the situation. I thought they just don't want to be around me because of the situation. Yeah. And so I chose not to pursue it. And it got really lonely. I found myself kind of sitting by myself for a long time. So from this experience, I've learned that when somebody loses somebody, to stick with them, remind them that you love them and support them still. That doesn't mean that you have to go to their house every day. It means that there's something that you can do. Like what inspired my book actually was a friend of ours who died, who was much younger, and I was very concerned about his wife. And so I made a commitment to send her a card every week for a year. And I did that, and I had something different in each card that she could think about that would help support her and show her that she was loved, and that she had somebody when she needed to that she could call or go to, and know that I was always there for her. And that helped me in dealing with his death as much as it helped her in dealing with his death. So doing things like that, because I learned from my isolation that's not the way to do it. You need to figure out a way. And another thing I did at that time, after Jacques had been gone for a year, it was New Year's Eve, and I thought, I've got to make a change. I can't go the rest of my life sitting here by myself. So I thought, I'm not good with resolutions because, they work for about a week and then you forget what they were. So I thought I'm going to focus on one thing this year. And what came to me was to accept invitations. And I thought, that's crazy because nobody's inviting me anywhere. But the feeling was so strong that that was what I was supposed to do. I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I wrote it down and committed to myself that I would. As soon as I did that, I started getting invitations. And they weren't from people that I knew so much in the past. And they all were for new opportunities that I never had even thought existed before. And it radically changed my life because I was meeting new people. They didn't know or probably care the fact that my husband had died a year before. It just wasn't part of what was going on. Yeah. So I was able to have a fresh start in each one of the situations that came up. And it was amazing. Like the first invitation I got was to be on the editorial board for the newspaper for the county. And wow, I never even thought that much about the editorial board before, but boy, was that interesting.
Yeah.
And I really got to delve into things that I hadn't thought of before. And I felt that I was doing a valuable service to the community. And that was just the first one. There were so many more. So it was realizing that I didn't have to be sitting by myself, and there were things out there that I could do that were worthy and valuable that I could enjoy. And that it was a no disrespect to the fact that I was grieving or to my husband who was gone. And it really helped me turn a corner on my life. And I've looked at things entirely differently ever since I made that commitment to myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things, isn't it? Like you have to get through almost the guilt of, should I feel happy now that someone's passed? But like you say, you're living your best version in honor of them as much as anything. What would they want for you? That's part of it, and that all helps with the motivation, doesn't it? And it could be that you then start a new business because that's the way you want to reach and help other people. Or if you're in a business and you keep going, you have to get past the negative emotions to the point where you can be happy again, because there is, business is about relationships, isn't it, really? If you're, I want to be sensitive as I say this because people are at different stages, but if you're too introspective in how you're feeling and what you're going through, you're not in a place where you can help clients, customers, whatever. And you might not be motivated to help them at that point. But that's all part of the process of getting through to life goes on, isn't it? That's the stage you want to get to. You don't forget the people, but you operate and you move forward positive with good memories. And then you build something else in the future. So I like that. That's all. It's very practical what you're saying, and it's very, very human. It's very real because, we all have different feelings that we experience through part of life. Life is unbiased in some ways with some of the things that we face. But it's good that you've brought a good perspective of coming through it out the other side, finding a way to express yourself, finding a way to help other people as well. It makes the world bigger than just what you had, that seemingly your world has got smaller, but it's like, no, let's make it bigger by finding a new passion, meeting other people, getting connected somehow, or just start that search of, I need some sort of inspiration. And for you, it was accepting invites. For other people, it might be, I don't know, maybe starting a business or making a phone call to somebody they haven't spoken to for a long time, whatever it might be. It's encouraging because you have to know there's hope going through the process. Even if, you've experienced it several times, people still need reminding, which is good. Just as we kind of wrap up the discussion today, it's really good, so thank you for what you've shared. Just tell us a little bit about your book. When's the best time for someone to get your book? Is it literally just as somebody, and obviously there's a certain way of passing the book on to somebody if that's the case, but what's the stage someone would need to be at in order for them to really benefit? And maybe that's a difficult question.
No, that's a really good question, and I've had people talk to me about it before. The consensus seems to be not in the first couple of weeks, but after that, it's a great gift. For instance, it's so much better than sending flowers, because flowers don't last very long and they're gone, where the book is going to last forever and can keep continuing to bring them help. And with this book, it's the sort of book that you can pick it up and read wherever you want to in it, because different chapters are on different subjects, and you can say, okay, I really need to think about gratitude today. So you read the gratitude chapter then. And it really is a wonderful gift to give to somebody. And it's also a good gift to give to yourself. I just met one of my book owners whose husband died toward the end of July. And she was looking online trying to find a book that would help her. And she liked mine because it actually had practical things for her to do instead of just being somebody else's story or memoir. And she was so grateful. And she even came over to Maui to meet me because of it. And we got to have a great conversation, and I got to sign her book for her. But she was just thrilled that she had found it for herself. So it's something that you can buy for yourself, but I also strongly encourage you to give it to anybody you know who's dealing with loss, especially with the holidays coming up. Thanksgiving seems to be a trigger for a lot of people. And instead of waiting till Christmas, maybe give them a Thanksgiving gift of something that can provide them support.
Brilliant. Yeah. And it's good. It's one of those things when you don't know what to say. You want to say something, but you don't know what's the right thing to say. Is it better if I don't say anything? Yeah, having a book that you can give them. People pick it up when they have a moment when they want to, don't they? And it's less kind of in their face, that it's their timing rather than when you're with them. So no, that's really good. Best place to get the book on your website, or?
I don't actually sell it on my website, but it's available. It's traditionally published, so it's available any place books are sold, like Amazon or Barnes & Noble or independent booksellers. You can get it through just about anyone. I have a author friend of mine in the UK, and she was able to get it there with no problem.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Oh, that's really good. So there'll be a link for people to click through to your website as well to find out more about you wherever they're listening to this. But is that the best way for people that want to learn more, as well as getting the book? How can they sort of follow you, touch base, best way?
Yes, you can come to my website, which is the same as the name of my book, Loving and Living Your Way Through Grief.com. And I also have a new thing that is just starting up of support every week. That's at no charge, because we have a nonprofit foundation that makes sure that all the expenses are covered so that we can provide comfort and support to people who are grieving in the way of writing through grief, getting to know the other people in the group by visiting in small groups. And this is all on Zoom, so you can do it any place in the world. And also doing happiness practices that you can put into effect in your life that can help you feel better. And that's every week. So you can contact me. There's a contact link on my website, or it's Emily at lovingandlivingyourwaythroughgrief.com is my email, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Brilliant. Wow. That's amazing. The fact that it's available like that for people to reach out is really good and needed. Definitely needed. Thank you. We have run out of time on this episode, but thank you, Emily, for everything that you've shared. The practical stuff, but also you give hope to people. I think that there's ways people could navigate through things. You're a living example yourself that, loss doesn't have to mean your life finishes. There's still things for you to do, ways that you can help other people as well. So yeah, that's inspiring. Just being here as well as what you've shared. So thanks again for your time on that. It's great that you are here.
Thank you.
For everybody listening as well, tough subject in some ways, but life is tough. We have to go through tough stuff. Helps us get through in a stronger way, makes us who we are. But always think about somebody else, that when you're navigating through the bad stuff, think that I want to get better so I can help other people. It keeps us out of just going inside and staying there, because that's not a healthy place to be. We need to go there now and again to sort stuff out, but not stay there. Make sure you've got good people around you as well. Listen to this again, I would suggest. Get a copy of Emily's book as well, and have it ready to give to somebody, because it's not an easy time to navigate. And I've been in a situation where I don't know what I'm going to say a lot of the time, but I want to say something. You'll think of something and a way to navigate it as well. There's lots you can do. We always encourage you to make sure you do something rather than just listen to this and let it go. Put something into practice. How can you make your business a happier place to be because you've become happier? Cultivating joy. Lots of different things to discover and implement. So we will leave you with that, and we will catch you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.